Please welcome the Vice President of Migrations and Modernization at AWS, Dr. Asa Calavade.
Hello. What if you had a tool built on 18 years of experience that understood the nuances of your systems, anticipated problems, proposed solutions, and even executed tasks? This is not science fiction. It is here, and it is here now. Today, we're going to introduce a tool that's going to completely transform how you do migration and modernization. I'm Asa Calavade. I lead the migration and modernization products in AWS. I have 25 years of industry experience. I started my career doing startups. I founded and led 2 startups, one in data analytics and one in telecom. 9 years ago, when I joined AWS, I first worked on our hybrid storage services. I worked with hundreds of customers like yourselves to connect on-prem workloads to the cloud. I've also had the privilege of leading the transformation of AWS's go-to-market systems. Using generative AI, we transformed how tens of thousands of AWS sellers work with customers like yourselves to meet your business objectives. And today, I am excited to welcome you to the new world of migration and modernization. I'm thrilled to have with me on stage Jermaine Henson, who is the CIO at the Hartford, Rob Kim, the CTO at Presidio, and Everett Dogner from AWS. In his keynote, Matt Garman this morning introduced the transformation capabilities of Q Developer. And in this talk, I am excited to show you how Q Developer, the first AI-powered assistant, is going to transform your migration and modernization. Now, migration and modernization is critical because it helps our customers drive their key business priorities. I talk with customers of all sizes and all industries across the globe. And I consistently hear that there are 4 things that are top of mind for all these customers. The first is business transformation. Every customer is looking to transform existing business processes using generative AI. And that ranges from sales and marketing, customer support, to even employee experiences. The second is innovation. Customers are looking to move away from legacy systems, remove tech debt, modernize, so you can innovate quickly and build new applications. The third is data. Data is top of spear for everybody. They're looking to consolidate data so you can build machine learning and get insights out of it and do AI at scale. And the fourth priority is around people and leadership culture. Customers are looking to make sure that their teams are investing in innovation, leaning in, working closely with their customers, and really creating that culture of innovation. So these are the 4 key priorities: business transformation, innovation, consolidating data, and leadership and culture. And migration and modernization is critical because it allows customers to move away from legacy workloads, shift their spend towards new and modern applications. Let's take the example of Danske Bank. They have both retail and business customers. They've been looking to modernize and transform their systems so that they can build new digital experiences for their end customers. Through automation, they were able to bring down the time it required to modernize applications from 2 to 4 weeks down to just 2 hours. And now, they're rapidly innovating. They're moving 100+ workloads every month. And they've been able to build new generative AI applications, having consolidated their data. So we are excited to see how Danske Bank has been transforming themselves. Now, while that's exciting, I talk to customers a lot, and I hear that migration and modernization is still complex. Kinetic IT found that 90% of CIOs have experienced at least one failed migration project. I was talking to a CIO last week, and he said that teams sometimes forget that migration is not the destination. And by the time they've actually finished migrating, there is so much fatigue that they just don't have the energy or the resources to modernize. So what makes migration and modernization so complex? There are three key reasons. The first, the hardest part is getting started. If you think about a typical migration project, it involves assessing what you actually have, getting an inventory of your systems, then making a plan to execute this migration, and then actually executing this. It requires oftentimes months, if not years, to complete this process, and then you start with the actual execution. So the hardest part oftentimes is getting started. The second challenge is collaboration. It takes a village to do migration and modernization. Any typical project involves software architects, security architects, networking experts, project managers, your CFO, systems integrators, and each of them is used to a different tool. So now imagine all the complexity of all these people collaborating, having their tools exchange data. So collaboration does add a layer of complexity to the migration and modernization process. And the third is the scarcity of expertise. It's hard to find experts who understand the legacy systems as well as the modern systems. And these are business-critical systems that are continuously running as well. So if you look at this, it's the three challenges: getting started, collaborating, and expertise that makes migration and modernization challenging. Now at AWS, we have been doing migrations and modernizations for over 18 years. We have 20+ services and tools that help customers with their journey. We have tools such as application discovery service, database migration, mainframe modernization, data sync, and many more. In addition to tools, we have programs. We have several programs that help you get started, such as the Migration Acceleration Program that gives you credits, or experience-based acceleration, which allows you to do quick prototypes so you can get started with change management. We have AWS ProServe, optimization and licensing assessments. So a set of things that help you get going faster. We also have over 1,400 tools from our ISV partners in the marketplace, and hundreds of systems integrators who are here to help you. So we have a lot of experience doing migration and modernization. But now, with the advent of Gen AI, we have the ability to take this to a completely new level. We can take generative AI to accelerate and scale your migration and modernization projects through the entire process. And today, I'm excited to show you how Q Developer, the first AI-powered assistant, is here to transform your entire migration and modernization process. With this first launch, we focused on 3 key workloads. And these are workloads that are most common, but yet highly complex: .NET modernization, mainframe modernization, and VMware migration. Now, I'm actually very excited about the technology that we built to make Q Developer's transformation capabilities available for you. So let's geek out for a couple of minutes and look at what's under the hood. There are 3 key capabilities that we focused on. One is an agentic infrastructure. The second, a completely new interaction paradigm. And third, years of that domain expertise that I talked about, combined with the power of LLMs to create highly specialized skills. Let's look into each of them in more detail. So we built a new agentic infrastructure that allows agents to work based on objectives. You give an agent the objective, modernize my .NET project. And based on that, it comes up with a plan. It then calls multiple tasks that are sub-agents that are highly sophisticated, and it can orchestrate through all of them to execute on a migration and modernization project. These agents use state-of-the-art techniques, reasoning, self-debugging, self-validation, feedback-based analysis, and all of these to really progress through the orchestration process. And these agents are not only using LLMs, but we use all kinds of AI. We use graph neural networks, machine learning techniques, and bring all of them together to create this highly specialized expertise. The second capability is a completely new interaction paradigm. So remember I mentioned earlier that the hard part in migration modernization is collaboration. We are now introducing two capabilities that make that much, much easier: human in the loop and a chat interface. Through a chat interface, you can directly interact with the system, give your objective, get unblocked, and ask for the status of a project. And everywhere along the way, you have the human in the loop. So you as an end user can approve a project, tweak the plan, or even take over places where the system might get stuck. So combining the chat and the human in the loop, you have a completely different interaction paradigm. The third capability is domain expertise. So as I mentioned before, we have 18 years of experience doing this. So we've learned from that. We're using some of the tools we've built over the years as agents within this infrastructure. We've created specialized agents for the three workloads I talked about: .NET, Mainframe, and VMware. And we are going beyond transforming the code, but we're looking at the entire system. So take VMware, for example. It's not just about moving VMs. A typical VMware environment has networking, firewalls, security structures. So when we think about transformation, we're looking to move that entire VMware workload to the equivalent in AWS. Similarly, when you think about mainframes, yes, it's hard to transform COBOL to Java code, but there are so many other things that happen in a mainframe program, your vSAM databases, DB2, and so on. So we're really transforming entire systems. And so if you think about the chat and the human in the loop interface, the agentic infrastructure, and the specialized agents, they're all working together within the concept of a workspace. This workspace holds the artifacts, applies the security, permissions, rules, so that your data is secure, much like what we do with all our cloud services. So this is the technology that's powering Q developers' transformation capability. Now, what does that mean for you? So here's a new interface. We built a brand new web application that brings together all your distinct tools and experiences into one place. And this is the one place to go for all your migration and modernization projects. So if you look here, on the left side is the original plan. So remember I told you you can give Q an objective. So once you've given an objective, the system shows you what's the proposed execution plan for that migration or modernization project. On the left there, you can see the human in the loop interface. So once the plan shows up, you can tweak it or you can approve it. And you can interact with that as the human, guiding the system. On the bottom left there, right side, you can see that's where the agents execute. So here you can see the actual execution of the task. You can see what tasks were executed, how long they took, and even why they were executed. It's a full chain of thought there. And the fourth component on the bottom left is the chat interface. This is where you can ask questions, you can unblock yourselves, or you can even look at the status. So this is how all of these components come together. And this is your new world of migration and modernization. So now if you think about it, remember the three challenges I mentioned: getting started, collaboration, and expertise? That's how we've brought our expertise and Gen AI together to create this completely new migration and modernization experience. Now let's look at these three workloads in some detail. Let's start with the first one, modernizing .NET applications. Why is that important? For context, the .NET framework was created back in 2002. And then in 2016, a more cross-platform Linux-based framework was introduced, which we call .NET Core, or we just call it .NET. Now, 20+ years since it was first introduced, we still have 35% of web applications out there today that run on the old .NET framework. So customers everywhere are motivated to move from .NET Framework to the more modern cross-platform Linux-based environment? Many reasons. First is cost reduction from having to pay server licensing costs. They also want to get better performance and scale by modernizing the stack. And once you've modernized it, you have the ability to create completely new applications by leveraging open source or microservices. So there's a lot of reasons why customers are looking to do this modernization. But this is hard, right? It's not about just moving code around. It's about adapting middleware. Typically, an on-prem environment will have many versions of the .NET Framework environment. You need to translate from that to the modern versions. You need to resolve dependencies, make sure your runtime and the startup are all configured for Linux, and you have to rewrite the outdated code. So it's challenging. But this is where I would love to tell you more about transforming .NET workloads with Amazon Q Developer. So let's look at 5 steps that are involved in this modernization process. And we'll look at each of them in some detail. And each of these now becomes a task in the Q Developer environment that I showed you. And the agentic infrastructure runs through these tasks. Each of them might have subtasks that are more specialized and really accelerates and simplifies and scales that entire modernization process. The first step, obviously, is to connect to your source, get an assessment of the data that you want to modernize, discover it, and create a plan. All of this happens within a few clicks. Remember, I said the hardest part is getting started. This is the part that lets you get going right away. And once you've done that, the next step is actually doing the code transformation. This is where we use the combination of LLMs and rules to transform from the old framework to the new environment. And what's really cool is sometimes the queue may not get it all right. Some of the transformation might fail. But that's when the queue actually uses self-debugging to iterate on the process. It looks at the bugs, feeds it back, iterates on it, and then you have the fully transformed code. And at that point, if you want, you can still invoke a human to make some further tweaks. With all of that done, you're ready to validate the code and deploy it. Now, to see this in action, I'd love to welcome Everett to the stage. Thank you, Everett.
Thanks. Thanks, Asa. So let's get started. As Asa mentioned, getting started is sometimes the hardest part. And with Amazon Q Developer, we've actually made it very simple. You can see on the screen there, you just have to click the Ask Q to create a job button. When you do that, Q is going to ask what it is that you want to do. And you're going to get a display that's going to give you some options, the 3 options that Asa talked about earlier. And in this case, we've chosen the modernized .NET applications across multiple repositories. So for the next few minutes, we're going to walk through this demo of how this works. There are 4 in-depth sessions that are happening this week, and at the end of the session, we'll give you some more details about those so that you can go and get more information. But you can see at the bottom of the screen, in the Q chat interface, you can create the job. Once we create the job, the first thing that Q is going to do is ask to connect to the AWS account. So we put our AWS account ID, click Next, and now we're going to go and connect to our repository, our code repository. And to do this, we use AWS code connections. So in this instance, we put in the Amazon resource name, or the ARN, or the ARN. I don't know where you all fall on the acronyms, or how you pronounce some of these things. You enter the ARN, click Create a Connector, and as we were doing this demo, I actually didn't have permission to the repo. And so this is where the collaboration piece comes in. So we're on the collaboration tab, and you can see that an administrator has approved the connector request. So because I didn't have permission, but I entered the ARN, an administrator had to then go in. They were notified from Q, and they had to go in and approve that. So now Q is able to make that connection. This is where Q is functioning as an extension of your team. It's doing sort of all of that work in the middle, making sure that people are communicating, and making sure that, in this case, I can't go in and do something that I shouldn't be doing because I'm not an administrator and I don't have permissions to the repo. So once we're connected to the repo, Q starts working. It's going to go through and it's going to scan for projects, it's going to scan for repos, and it's going to scan for branches of code inside of those repos. It's doing all of these things in parallel. And you can see we've got the job plan on the left side of the screen. We have the work log on the right, where you get the time-stamped, step-by-step details of what Q is doing on your behalf. And then in the lower left-hand corner, we have the Ask Q chat interface. And that's where you can ask any questions that you have. You can ask for links. What's the status? What's going to happen next? And Q will give you answers to those. Once Q has finished scanning the repos, it starts to develop the plan, the wave plan for how we're going to migrate things and how we're actually going to do the transformation of the code from a legacy version of .NET into a modern version of .NET. And here you can see we can select the different repos on the right, the different branches of code. And once you've gone through and you've selected what you want to transform, where you want to start, you get to click what is possibly my favorite button. In this case, it's labeled Send for Approval, but it is going to be labeled Send to Q as we go through this process and get deeper into it. So now that we've sent Q what it is we want to transform, specifically the code branches and the repos that we want to transform, now we're going to actually start the process of transforming the code. And Q is going to be doing this, again, in parallel on your behalf. So it's that extension of your team, it's that developer that is going to go and sort of work on all of that technical debt that you have. Rather than having your primary developers do that, they can go build new features for your customers. And Q in the background is going to be doing this transformation, and it's going to be doing it in parallel. One of the cool features about this is that Q is actually going to build the code after the transformation. And if it encounters an error in the build, it's going to use the LLM to self-debug. And in the majority of cases, it's going to be able to completely self-debug the code, get the build, and publish it back out to the repo. And you can see on the right-hand side of the screen the errors resolved. Those are errors that Q has resolved on its own using the LLM. And when it's not able to resolve an error, it will actually, using the collaboration tab, will send you a notification. And that's where a developer can use an IDE to go in and find the problem, fix the problem, and publish the code back to the repo, where Q is going to continue to monitor that repo, and it's going to pick up that change, and then it can continue with the transformation process. In this case, as we were doing this demo and preparing for this, we actually transformed 1 million lines of code in a very short amount of time, spread across multiple repos. Q is able to self-debug the errors that it found and publish them back into the AWS account that we connected to in the very first step into the code repo that was available there. This is possibly my new favorite screen in all of AWS. I've been at AWS for 9 years. We've changed the console. We've enhanced a lot of things. I think of this as the hero report. This is that screen that when you get the call from your manager, your senior leadership that says, hey, what's the status of the transformation? If Asa were to call me and ask me that, she's deeply technical. I would just send her a link to this. But you always get that call that's that, hey, I need that right now because I'm going into a leadership meeting in 10 minutes and I need to provide an update. I can just go and take a screenshot, or you can take a screenshot, email it to your leadership team, and they have a very clear representation of everything that's happening inside of your .NET transformation project. And with that, I would like to hand it back to Dr. Asa Calavaid.
That was quite exciting, huh? So with that, you can see that we can speed up the whole migration process by up to 4 times, reduce the cost by up to 40%. You can do this at scale. Not only can you transform one application, but tens of thousands of applications at the same time. And the system does a validation, so you don't have to. Now let's welcome a customer to actually show us how they've been using Q Developer. Please join me in welcoming Jermaine Henson, the CIO at the Hartford. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Asa. Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. So my name is Jermaine Henson. I am from the Hartford, and I'm pleased to be with you today. You know, I'm representing the Hartford today, a company with a rich history dating back to 1810. For 214 years, we've been at the forefront of insurance and financial services, safeguarding what matters most to our customers. Here are a few notable facts about our company. The Hartford insured Abraham Lincoln's home. And we also ensured the construction of the iconic Golden Gate Bridge. You know, building on what Asa and Everett has shared around Amazon Q Developer, I want to share a little bit about our experience at the Hartford. First, you know, to provide some additional context, approximately 20 to 25% of our application runtime is currently based on multiple versions of .NET, up through version 4.5. Now, this version diversity, while a testament to our legacy of innovation, has also created some technical debt. And so we found ourselves at this pivotal junction where we were forced with one or two options. One option was to upgrade to a newer version of .NET Framework or embark on a more transformational journey to upgrade to .NET Core. After careful consideration and extensive analysis, we chose the path of .NET Core, recognizing its potential to help accelerate our business transformation. The benefits of this transition and that choice really was multifaceted, and it really aligned to our strategic goal to not only migrate to the cloud, but to transform our business processes along the way. First and foremost, .NET Core offers cross-platform compatibility. This feature is paramount of importance in today's diverse technology ecosystem. The flexibility that this allows basically enabled our systems to run on Windows, Linux, Mac OS, and significantly expanded our operational capabilities while reducing our dependency on Windows. Furthermore, .NET's core, the modular architecture, presents opportunities to enhance application performance and adopt microservices architecture. So this shift supports our move towards containerization, cloud native development, and really positions us to be more agile when you think about speed to market and our responsiveness to market demands. We were also very aware of the challenges involved in this transformation. The architectural differences between the .NET Framework and .NET Core are substantial. So this presented complexities such as application native libraries, APIs, and security control methods. We were a bit worried about the risk, and as Asa mentioned earlier in her talk, sometimes the hardest part was just getting started. So when Asa mentioned that, I couldn't agree more. But we did get started. We had this moment. We had a legal vendor management system called Skylinks, and we were preparing to migrate to AWS. To fully leverage AWS's capabilities, we aimed to upgrade the application from .NET 4 to .NET Core before the migration. And it was in partnership with the AWS team that we discussed using the Q Developer capability to drive an acceleration of our transformation. So we decided to give it a try. Using Q Developer, our reinsurance team successfully converted the business layer of Skylinks to .NET Core from 4, to .NET Core. And as Everett described earlier, you know, it was truly like the teammate that he described, right? It helped our developers reduce manual effort by 30%. Our developers really enjoyed interacting with Q Developer, asking questions to generate information around sequence diagrams. It gave us great insights into the application workflows, enhanced our understanding of the complex system, as well as helped with the production documentation. We also recognized the opportunity of Q Developer being used beyond this single application. So other lines of business, as we speak, are exploring this tool for Java applications, as well as Mainframe, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But we're seeing productivity gains, enhanced security, improved application performance. My team is really eager to use this in our transformation journey, not just to accelerate the upgrade process, but to start building new functionality on the upgraded applications. Looking ahead, we expect the transformation capabilities of Amazon Q Developer will really serve as a catalyst for the future innovations at the Hartford. In fact, we're looking into this Mainframe capability that you'll hear about here shortly. It's got some features that we're really excited about, but I'll leave it to Asa and Everett to tell you more about the details regarding that. In closing, I just want to say really quickly, it was not just about updating our technology stack. It was really about the bigger modernization journey that we had in front of us, and also this desire to transform our businesses as well. The Hartford is at the vanguard of technology innovation. We're now better equipped as we move forward in this cloud migration to leverage advanced technologies like generative AI, machine learning, and really it positions us and enables us to respond swiftly to market changes and deliver superior experiences to our customers. So wanted to share that. Thank you this afternoon. I'll turn it back over to Asa.
Thank you. We appreciate your partnership, Jermaine, and I can't wait to see how you keep transforming your company.
Thank you.
Thank you. So Jermaine mentioned mainframes, and that's a good segue for us to look at our second use case, modernizing mainframe applications. There are 10,000 plus mainframes out there today. If you took a flight, made a cell phone call, or used your credit card, it's highly likely that it actually touched a mainframe transaction somewhere. Now, while mainframes drive business-critical applications, customers are looking to modernize their existing mainframes into new systems. The first and foremost is business transformation. As they look to transform their business, they want to move away from legacy code so they can modernize and build new applications. We are all aware of the skills crisis of experts who understand mainframe code and can work in modern cloud technologies. And customers are also looking to save costs from maintaining licenses. Now, this is hard. We've been talking about mainframe modernization for a while. And it's hard because mainframes are monolithic. In fact, mainframes were the original monolith. You think about these applications, they have tens, if not hundreds of millions of lines of code. And they're all pulled together. It's hard to decompose that into different businesses. Their dependencies are complex. And because they're running business-critical applications, some of these migrations take years. But now, we have a unique opportunity to really use the power of LLMs to transform how we do mainframe modernization. And with that, I want to tell you a bit more about Q Developer's capabilities to modernize mainframe applications. Again, let's look at 5 steps that are involved in this process. The first one is analysis. There's so much code out there, and so the first step is really to analyze what's in that code. Can we document it? Can we extract the business logic, the technical components? And once that's done, then you can move on with the steps. So today, what is really exciting to me is the ability to create this documentation using LLMs. At the scale at which we're looking at, it was previously just impossible to do this using rule-based systems or heuristics. So one of the first innovations we have in this project is to use LLMs to document tens and hundreds of millions of lines of code. Once we have done that, then we use graph neural networks to come up with an analysis of all the dependencies. Once we know the dependencies, we can then break up that monolith into business domains. So you know what is your sales application, what might be your HRS application, the marketing app, and so on. So once you've grouped these business domains, the next step is to actually do the execution plan. So we then come up with what's the right sequence to do this migration. So you're taking care of the dependencies, but yet you do the project in manageable chunks of work. And then the next step is the actual refactoring. So many of you may be aware of our Blue Age refactoring capability that we've developed over the last year or two. With the agentic infrastructure, we now have the ability to pull all of that expertise into this Q developer framework, and now you can transform from COBOL code to Java. And then you can actually run and execute it in AWS. Again, to see this in action, I'd love to bring Everett back to the stage.
Thanks, Asa. So just like .NET, we start with telling Q what our goals are and what it is we're trying to accomplish. In this case, we've already told Q that we want to modernize our mainframe and transform our COBOL code. To do this, we're going to put all of our COBOL files, things like binary files, copybook, job control, mapping, just all of it, into an S3 bucket as objects. Q is then going to connect to that S3 bucket, and it's going to go through and it's going to scan, it's going to look for all of those files to see what's available. In this case, we have over 4,000 files in that S3 bucket. As Asa mentioned, the first step in transforming your COBOL mainframe applications is to document the code. Q is going to go through. You can select the level of detail, whether you want summary or you want really in-depth documentation. And then you get to click that Send to Q button. And Q goes and works in the background. It does the undifferentiated heavy lifting of actually examining all of the business processes, the flows, the workflow, the job flow inside of all of those COBOL files, and it documents them. And you can see on the far left, you've got kind of the high-level flow chart. As we move into the middle screen, you can actually see how that program executes. And as you start to get into the text, which is probably a little difficult to read, it's actually walking you through what's happening every step of the way, what every file is doing, what the business process is, what the technical process is on the background. Q is doing all of this for you. I've got some developers that work on my team inside of AWS, and our code is not documented this well. And if you can imagine a mainframe application that's maybe 50 years old, that's been developed and changed and added on to, and the original developers are long since retired, that code is probably not documented very well. So Q is going to help with that. Once we've documented the code, the next step through the collaboration tab is to go and create domains. Domains map to business functions or business domains. So we're going to create those business domains. We're going to select the files that are attached to those business domains. And then we're going to start the decomposition process. And decomposing the code is where actually Q is going to break things apart, and it's going to figure out how it can rewrite it into Java so that it can run on Linux on the Blue Age runtime inside of AWS, and transform those DB2 databases to run inside RDS. As we're selecting those files and we're creating the domain, in this case we've got our warehouse management domain that we've created, we're also going to select some files and make them seeds. And seeds contain those core business functions that you want to build around. So we're going to tag some things as seeds. We also have the ability to mark a domain as a common. And common is going to make it a shared library, so that when it's running inside of AWS, it's actually going to be available to all of the other domains so that they can call on that shared library the same way if you were writing this from scratch today. So now we've decomposed our code into domains. We have our integration points. We're ready to do our unit migration. So our domains are going to be one unit that we can migrate at a time. We've maintained our workflow. Q has created all of the documentation to help bridge that knowledge gap and to help make it easier to do this transformation and to maintain that code in the future. And now we've successfully decomposed our code. It's really that easy. It's just giving it your files, giving it all of those binaries, letting it scan it, and letting it do the transformation. In this case, in our warehouse management domain, we had 685 files with 31,000 lines of code. And you can see all the lines of code, all the files that were attached to it, and the success. We also have a graph view. The graph view helps you to understand the interaction of all of those different business domains and all of that code that we're transforming, so that you can see that warehouse management that we chose actually talks to supply, it talks to human resources, engineering talks to warehouse management. These are things that can be very difficult to understand if you don't have your code documented and somebody hasn't touched it in maybe 20 or 30 years. After we've documented and then decomposed the code, the next step is the wave migration. So this is the plan. And you can see that engineering and then human resources and sales. So Q developer is going to go through and it's going to make decisions based on what's connected to what, in what order things should be migrated. Of course, you can add preferences to this, you can make changes to it, but Q developer is going to, again, work as that extension of your team and use all of that knowledge that it's been trained on to make a determination on what should go first, what should go second, so on. So here we have our first 3 domains that we want to transfer: engineering, human resources, and sales. And again, here you have my favorite button, send to Q. I have all kinds of science fiction things that go on in my brain when I say that. We've done our transformation. It's about 51 minutes, several thousand files, more than 1 million lines of code, and we're back on the hero screen. Now, we actually took one of the transformations that ran through Q and created this kind of rotating galaxy of the code. This represents 3.3 million lines of code spread across 3,500 files. The average program is about 2,500 lines of code. And there's a blue dot up there in that orange and yellow. I don't know that you can really see it, but that's delineating probably the largest SQL query that you are ever going to come across. And then that black hole in the corner that has that thing that kind of looks like a flower, that's that kind of cryptic assembler program that every mainframe runs for batch in transactions. All right, I'd like to welcome back Asa Calavade.
Thank you. I love that galaxy view. It's pretty geeky, huh? But now that galaxy isn't that far, far away. Our internal testing showed that with Q developer, we can speed up migration, modernization of mainframe applications by up to 50%. I'd love to show you this in a video testimonial from Toyota for some of the work that they have done here.
In 1979, Toyota launched our mainframe. To put that in perspective, that same year, we launched the Supra. Both at the time were amazing innovations, but ultimately, the Supra held up, mainframe not so much. The work that we did with AWS is going to be game-changing for Toyota. Toyota has invested the last 45 years in a mainframe system that is responsible for our entire supply chain. And today, 90% of that supply chain still runs on the mainframe. If the mainframe goes down, we cannot sell cars. When we have to make a change, having to reverse engineer code is very time-consuming. In the past, when we tried to migrate away from the mainframe, we were always told years and billions of dollars. We reached out to AWS and we asked them, would you be open to helping us migrate from our mainframe? What would it take for us to figure out how we can get generative AI to be able to do that reverse engineering for us? AWS said, we're all in, using Amazon Q, making it even better by supporting COBOL, validated by Toyota COBOL engineers. We were able to scan hundreds of modules and output quality documentation in a single day. That would normally have taken us months to do. Toyota would be able to get off the mainframe in record time and create something that was truly unique. It's just something we're totally proud of.
We very much appreciate the partnership with Toyota. So far, we've seen 2 use cases, .NET modernization and mainframe modernization. Now let's look at the third use case, migrating VMware workloads to AWS. Over the last 8 years, customers have moved hundreds of thousands of VMs from on-prem to EC2. But there's still 70 million VMware workloads out there. And now more than ever, customers are motivated to move those VMware workloads to AWS. The first and foremost is license costs. They're looking to have a much more predictable cost structure. The second is scale and agility. Once you can move these applications to AWS, you have the ability to take advantage of the 200+ services and create modern applications and innovate on those applications. But again, this is hard. As I mentioned before, modernizing this not only includes moving those VMs, but there's a lot of stuff that's around those VMs in your IT infrastructure. Networking, firewalls, security groups. So it's important to be able to move that to the equivalent in AWS. And you often need to move VMs at a time, a bunch of VMs at a time, because they represent a certain application. And trying to do this one after the other is error-prone. And you need experts who understand both the VMware technology as well as cloud development technologies. So this is, again, where we have Amazon Q Developer helping with the transformation of VMware workloads. Now, you're starting to see a theme here. Again, we have different steps that are involved in this process, and each of these steps is an agent in our agentic infrastructure. The first step is assessing the inventory. So here we can look at whether your RV Tools is giving you data or using App Discovery Service. You get an inventory of everything that you have in the system. Then we look at the dependencies to create a network topology. Once again, we call our friends, the graph neural networks, to be able to come up with that network topology. Once we have the dependencies, the next step is to convert that into executable code. So we use LLMs to convert those network specifications into the equivalent in AWS. And we create the CDK infrastructure so you can deploy that right into your VPC. The next step is to take your VMs and look at the dependency to figure out what sequence we should be moving them in. So here we use algorithms to look at the dependencies, clustered VMs, and build up a migration plan. And then the VMs are migrated. We check the health of the system, and you're ready to cut over. So this entire system, again, leverages our expertise in building these systems over the years, the power of the agentic infrastructure, and the LLMs to create new code that you can now execute and accelerate and scale your VMware migration projects. Once again, I'd love to invite Everett to show us a demo.
Thanks, Asa. So we started in the same place. We've asked Q to create a job for us. We've told it that it's a VMware migration, modernization. And our first step is to use RV Tools to get an export from our vCenter server, our ESXi host, and that's going to contain all of the VM details, sizes, CPU, disk, RAM, things like that. We also have an agent that's going to run on premises and talk to the vCenter server and the ESXi host, one or the other or both. And that's going to help us to figure out what that sizing needs to be as far as CPU utilization, RAM utilization, network utilization, so that when those workloads move into AWS, we can make sure that we have the sizing correct. Here you can see that we've completed 3 imports of RV Tools. We also have 1 data collector running on premises. We've discovered 399 servers. At this point, you can download a spreadsheet that has all of this information in it, and I always think of that as kind of that ubiquitous spreadsheet that everybody maintains that has all of your VMware infrastructure in it, and we've all been doing that for the last, 15, 20 years. So you can download that, you can make any changes to it, you can edit it, you can re-upload it back into Q, and then Q is going to go review that, put those VMs into groups so that as you're doing your migration plan and actually starting to move those VMs, we'll know what order things need to go in. We've connected to our AWS account. Q has now gone through all of the information that we've uploaded, all the data that's come from that agent, and it's determined what the networking needs to look like, how the VPCs need to be configured. It's built CDK, CloudFormation templates. And then Q is actually going to go and it's going to build those VPCs and it's going to build the networking. And I don't know about any of you, but in my 9 years at AWS, there are plenty of times that I've gotten in a hurry and I've deployed a VPC or I've deployed an EC2 instance and I got distracted, made a mistake, came back up, and couldn't talk to anything. And then I had to go and troubleshoot it, and half the time I just delete it because none of my stuff is in production, and I go back and recreate it. Q Developer doesn't get in a hurry. It doesn't get distracted, and it doesn't make those simple mistakes that I tend to make when I'm actually deploying things and I'm not paying attention because I'm doing 3 or 4 other things at the same time. So now we've deployed all of our VPCs. Q is going to verify that everything can talk to each other in the way that it should. So all the VPCs can communicate, all of the networks can communicate with each other, and then you can go on to the next step using the migration tools to actually start migrating those VMs into AWS. And of course, we have the hero screen once again, so that you can present this to your management, you can monitor things here. This is the easy way to communicate to the executive team what the status of the transformation and the migration is. And with that, I would like to welcome back Dr. Asa Calavaid.
Thank you. Now, I've known Everett for 8 years. He doesn't make that many mistakes, but it's still good to have a bulletproof system. OK, so you just saw how we were able to speed up some of these common problems. And in our internal testing, we've seen that the time it took to create that network topology was just an hour compared to the 2 weeks it took us previously. And the wave planning was just 15 minutes compared to the 2 weeks again. So you can see we're significantly accelerating the parts that were most tedious, that slow down migrations. And so with this, you save costs with the license fees, do lots of projects in parallel, so you're using AI to scale. And the system does a lot of the testing and validation for you. So we showed through Q Developer how you can modernize from VMware on-prem to EC2. But we also know that not everybody may be ready to take that step, and you're still looking to keep your VMware environments. And our goal is always to provide you options with the ultimate goal of speeding up your migration and modernization project. So we have a few options for you. We've partnered with Red Hat and Nutanix, so you can run those environments in AWS. And I'm also very excited to show you something that you have been asking us for a very long time, the Amazon Elastic VMware Service. We introduced this last week, which is basically an AWS service that allows you to manage and run your VMware environments in AWS. This is different from VMware on AWS. This is managed by AWS on native cloud infrastructure. And in building this, we took 3 points in mind: speed, control, and flexibility. Knowing that you want to do these migrations quickly, we've provided a guided workflow within EVS so you can quickly provision and configure your clusters. Previously, it would take you weeks. Now you can do it in hours. We've also provided control. You can keep using the same tools that you were used to on-prem, but yet use them within the AWS environment, whether it's vMotion, high availability capabilities, vCenter, and so on. And third is flexibility. With this new infrastructure, you can continue to use the third-party applications, whether it's backup, recovery, disaster management, data management. All of them are available to you in the same familiar environment. And what's most exciting, you can run this as a self-managed service, or you can do it with partners. And we're working with several partners who will help you run this as a managed service. Speaking of VMware partners, I'd love to welcome to the stage Presidio. Presidio has been a long-term partner with us as part of the AWS Migration Modernization Competency Program. And I'd love to welcome Rob Kim, the CTO of Presidio, to the stage with us. Hi, Rob.
Good to see you.
Appreciate your partnership.
Well, thank you for having me. Certainly, I feel like you saved the best for last, right?
Absolutely. So Rob, you've been in this area for a while. What are you hearing in the market around VMware?
Well, first, Presidio has been an AWS partner helping our mutual clients with modernizing their technology environments for over a decade now. And as you may remember, we were also a launch participant in the VMC on AWS cloud offering, moving VM on-prem into the AWS cloud. And some of the deployments that we've done were definitely enterprise scale, over 150 nodes delivered. Now, in terms of market impact, Broadcom's actions post-VMware acquisition certainly has made the requests for optionality, specifically workload portability, certainly skyrocket. And whether that's with hypervisor alternatives like AWS EC2, the aforementioned Nutanix HV, as well as Red Hat, or container orchestration services like ECS, EKS, as well as ROSA. But we're also seeing an uptick of clients that are interested much more in cloud-native options, so going completely serverless, with obviously the more traditional AWS cloud-native services like Lambda and Aurora. And given the fact that most of our clients are already in cloud in some way, shape, or form, it really is the intention much more on not if we're going to move to the cloud, but obviously when and which migration method.
Totally makes sense. And now you've been working with us on Q Developer for a few months now. What are your first impressions? Where do you see this fitting into your business?
Yeah, Q Developer is an absolute accelerator for us. That's pretty much how we feel about it, especially when it comes to the discovery and the design phase of any migration effort, which tends to be the most time-consuming, as well as the area of most potential risk. And so the ability to be able to make sure that you comprehensively have accounted for every asset within your digital environment, but then also making sure that we're mapping and documenting those service definitions and workflows, because that's where the knowledge workers interface with the technology we deliver. And then finally, making sure that we're benchmarking the performance envelope, so make that when we're right-sizing these workloads, putting them on different hypervisors, different containers, that we know that those things behave differently. And so for Q Developer to come in and help orchestrate and produce and augment that manifest provides a higher level of confidence that we're going to provide a successful blueprint when we deliver against these migrations.
That's awesome. And what about EVS? How does that fit into your strategy?
Yeah, we're super excited about EVS, Elastic VMware Services, because we do feel that it fills a need for our clients. When, I believe it was April 30th, Broadcom decided we're no longer going to have VMC on AWS. That not only affected our current VMC on AWS subscribers, but it also affected those on-prem VMware customers that were looking for cloud-based VMware alternatives. So essentially pulled one of those options off the table. And so EVS obviously certainly fills that gap and then some, because now we have more granular hardware platform options available and much more subscription flexibility with the idea that you can bring your own VCF entitlements. And you couple that with the fact that these clients are making heavy investments in VMware, and so they can continue to utilize the platform tooling that they're used to, continue to maintain their operational processes, as well as leverage all of that institutional knowledge that their teams already have. And so EVS, we not only know that it fills a gap, but we think it's a level up.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for your partnership, and we're looking forward to continuing to build on this with you.
All right.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Okay, so we've all been doing migration modernization for a while, but sometimes you just need that catalyst to take things to the next level, and that time is now. I'm so excited to have shown you how Amazon Q Developer is here to help you transform the migration and modernization of these three key workloads, .NET, VMware, and mainframes. This is just the beginning. We have a lot to do. We'll continue to add features, more workloads, more specialized agents. Some of those agents could be ours, but some of them could be yours. We want to plug them all in and really accelerate this process. And I envision a world where in the future, you can have multiple migration modernization projects happening in parallel. You can be doing your .NET and VMware and Mainframe and many other workloads, all working out of the same environment. And we can think of a time when we can move entire data centers in weeks and months versus the years and decades it takes today. Today, we never think twice when we are migrating your servers or you're updating your software, applying software patches. So why should migration and modernization be any different? Why can't it be a simple and continuous journey as technology and business needs evolve? And that's where we are headed. Welcome to the new world of migration and modernization. We have a few sessions later this week that allow you to go into deeper details on each of these. I welcome you to attend them and share your feedback. Q Developers transformation capabilities are live preview today. Please try it out, give us your feedback, and help us build this out together. So thank you for your time. I know I'm the last session before dinner, but I appreciate your time. And I also want to thank Jermaine, Rob, and Everett for sharing their experiences with us. Do take a minute to fill out our survey forms. Feedback is important for us. Thank you.